I'm going to go live if everybody's happy with that. Okay, Claire and Boris, you were able to make it live. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Councillor Katie Porritt, and I'm the Chair of West Central Area Committee. I'd like to welcome you to the committee taking place this evening, to any members of the public joining us virtually or watching via the Council's YouTube site. The councillors present at this meeting include Councillors Martinelli, the Vice Chair, Councillor Bick, Councillor Glasberg, Councillor Holloway, Councillor Nestor, Councillor Nessinger, Councillor Payne and Councillor Simon Smith, and our county councillors, Councillor Gay, Councillor Nessinger and Councillor Ray. We do have apologies from Councillor Nessinger and Councillor Payne. I'm not aware of any others, so if anyone does, please let me know. That's great, thank you. We're also joined by our committee manager, Claire Tunnicliffe, and the meeting producer, Boris Herzog, as well as Sarah Steggles, who's our harm reduction and ASB, antisocial behaviour manager at the council, Sergeant Kevin Missick from the police force, John Richards from the Public Realm Engineering and Public Delivery team, and James Ogle, our projects officer for later items. If anyone has any problems hearing me during the meeting, just please let me know by typing in the meeting chat function. A general reminder that whilst committees are being run virtually, this committee cannot make decisions, but we are able to obviously discuss local issues and talk about things we would recommend. It's being broadcast live via the council's website, so speakers are reminded that by speaking and appearing in this meeting, you're giving consent to being recorded. It's automatically recorded and will be available now and then later on the council's YouTube pages. The process for each item will be: the relevant officer will give a brief introduction to their report. Councillors and members of the public participating in the meeting will be invited to type in the chat, type speak if you want to speak, or put your hand up. And the committee manager will check the Democratic Services inbox throughout, just in case we've got any live questions coming in from members of the public, and we'll read those out. I may choose to take a short break for the comfort of councillors and officers at some point, and if you require a break, please do let me know and I'll hold proceedings at the next convenient opportunity. Moving on to item 2, please could councillors advise if they have any declarations of interest and identify which item this relates to, please. No, I can't see any hands. That's fine. Obviously, you can declare during the meeting if you need to. So moving to item 4, we have matters arising. So there's a fairly long list tonight, and I've got updates on all of them. So the first 3 items relate to things that Police Sergeant Missick is kindly going to speak about. Some of them were held over from the last meeting, as you may remember. So item 1 was looking at e-scooters. I know this is actually coming up later in the public questions, so I don't know if Kevin would prefer to talk about that then. So it's e-scooters and, well, cycling, prohibition of cycling, all those things across the common. So PCPS Missick, would you like to say anything?
I think I can answer the question now. I think it comes back
So I think he'll pick up on that. And I do note that the respect signage that I think was Councillor Bick's EIP bid last year, if I remember rightly, is now in place. So we're awaiting feedback to see how that goes. The second action was really talking about engine idling. We haven't had an update about the Secretary of State's powers, but again, I think in terms of proportionality, I'm not sure if that's something we've been able to take forward. But again, I don't know if Kevin would be kind enough, whether you, in terms of engine idling, if there's anything the police have been doing recently.
Not really.
That's not illegal. If you're pulled into a parking space by the side of the road and you leave your engine idling, then even if you're sitting in the vehicle, my understanding is that is illegal. I take what you say about the difficulty to enforce it, but I just wanted to sort of say what I think is the right situation.
I think I might be talking about a slightly different offence to you then, Councillor. But what I'm going to do is, while they read, I'm going to quickly use my friend Google and double check.
I think that's something for us as councillors to be aware of, the kind of public information, the signs outside schools that do seem quite effective. But as Councillor Bick says, it's often, I think, issues of cars sort of sitting in particularly disabled bays, for example, that are convenient to drop people near the shops. We seem to have that in our ward quite a bit, where cars will just sit and idle there, you know, which is not great for air pollution, apart from other things. The third item just was related to CCTV, because I think at the last two meetings we've been talking about various different cameras controlled by different people, but most of which come to the Huntingdon CCTV headquarters. So I think it was just asking the police for sort of reassurance that we are working with all the cameras so that we can all share the footage where necessary. So I don't know if you're able to comment on that.
Yeah, so the stuff that comes from the shared service, which is the major ones that go out of around the city centre, all go to all go to be monitored at I was going to call it 1090, but that won't mean anything to you, to the CCTV control room, and we can access that practically live time. They can stream the footage directly to our control room, and you can get some officers have a login that they can watch it. So what you'll generally find is if there's an incident going on, our control room will be watching it, and they can relay that directly to us. Some of the other stuff, say for example, Grand Arcade, Lion Yard, Grafton Centre, isn't directly available to us, but we can access it relatively easily. There is a system called GoodSam. GoodSam's a very clever piece of IT that we can send somebody a link and they can upload their footage from their phone or from wherever it is onto that, and then we can access that from that point. And that's a really good system. We use that quite a lot, particularly it has other uses, such as like missing people can open up links and we can find out where they are. So we have a number of sort of IT solutions that allowed us to get information into us, and the main ones in the city centre are all kind of directly available to us from the shared service.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful to know and reassuring. Item 4 on the actions was about the Rouse Ball Pavilion. So that's the toilets on Jesus Green, And I have a site visit with other ward councillors and the Jesus Green Association and officers next week. So that is, I mean, it's obviously a long-term project because we need to look at the financing for that, but I'm pleased to report that is moving forward as planned. Item 5 related to the perennial problem of people cycling through Christ Pieces when they're not allowed to, because it's a no cycling area. So John very kindly sent me the original order, which is 99 years old. So it's a bylaw, and which, because I think we queried why it was felt that might not be enforceable. I have to say it is quite an old, well, it's 99 years old, obviously. So, and I think John's also responded to say that because the legal advice is that the age and the changes since are unlikely to provide a sound basis for present day enforcement. And he also notes that even if it were possible for the community engagement team to do this, they lack the powers to enable this, particularly against e-moped, scooter and e-bike issues. It would require the Chief Constable to bestow such powers under the Community Safety Accreditation Scheme. And there would also be health and safety concerns for council staff who are trying to stop a rider at speed. Again, John has asked as well, would the police consider perhaps some targeted enforcement action around Christ Pieces, just to try and, again, make people more aware of the fact they shouldn't be cycling through there, because it is a very, very regular occurrence. I think every time I cross it, you see someone go by on a bike. So again, I don't know if Kevin would be kind enough to comment.
So actually, I'll store that in my head for later, but I'll answer the question now. We do some stuff. It's one of those ones, as with most of the work we do around sort of people not cycling where they should. It's a kind of, when we're there, we do it. It's something that John, who's the PCSO on my team, he's out on foot sort of 7.5 hours out of every 8 hours that he works. Come rain or shine, he's a bit of a trooper. He will be doing that. We've recently done some sort of high vis enforcement around the cycling on Fitzroy Street and Burley Street. With support from some of our student officers, because each student officer has to do a project on an issue that they've discovered. So I will, next time the student comes and asks me about a project, I will direct them towards the cycling across Christ Piece. So what they tend to do is do some sort of high vis enforcement action, go and look at what some of the problems are, and then write me a nice email at the end. But I get some free enforcement action out of them, so I will add that to the list of things for people to do.
Thank you very much. And then item 6 on the actions. So I was going to talk to officers about Fitzroy and Burley Street, so around the Kite area near the Grafton, to look at parking bays, particularly for the e-bikes and e-scooters, which do tend to sort of get left as people are picking up hot food. So again, John, Public Realm and Engineering and Project Delivery Team Leader, has said, officers at the City Council have tried to move the kind of environmental improvement projects away from responsibilities that sit with the County Council, so highways things. So, but the County Council's local highway improvement programme might be a possibility. But we need to be mindful that the GCP, the Greater Cambridge Partnership, are also looking at a more integrated parking strategy, which is intended to include this kind of provision. He said that some work has already been done on potential rental e-scooter bays, but unfortunately, there's been some reluctance to take the permanent changes forward because the trials are still so uncertain. Apparently, the Department for Transport last week announced that it's not planning to legislate on this in the coming parliamentary session, which I have to say is quite disappointing to hear, and that they are enabling local transport authorities to extend the trials for 2 further years. So we're going to be in limbo, I feel, for quite a lot longer. He said he advised any ward councillors who wish to take this forward to start with the County Highways team and also cross-reference and check with GCP. So I'm sorry we can't find a solution to that, but I think it's going to be an ongoing issue that we'll all be mindful of. With relation to Burley Street and Fitzroy having more market stalls, I met with the market manager, and there are possibilities around that, either as a market designation or as individual stalls, but it's quite a long lead time. And again, given the general plans in the Grafton area for public realm improvements, it seems sensible for certainly the ward councillors, that would be myself, Councillor Bick and Councillor Martinet, to take this forward as part of that. So that's the end of those updates. And finally, we have Darwin Green. So can I just remind the committee, as usual, last time, some of us sit on the Joint Development Committee, so I think that's myself, Councillor Simon Smith, Councillor Nestor is a reserve, I think, and Councillor Holloway, are you a reserve on that? I can't remember, apologies. No, you're not, okay. So those of us who are on those planning committees need to not fetter our discretion and make any comments that could be prejudicial to a future application coming forward. As you may remember, the Darwin Green issue related to some of the houses and foundations that have had to be taken down, unfortunately. And we had an update last time, and officers have provided us with another update from the Planning and Building Control to confirm that there's been 3 condition discharges. These have been sent round. I think Claire might be able to put it on the screen in a moment just so we can see, but I'll run through it in general terms. So we've had 3 conditions discharged, which is allows obviously the planning authority to scrutinise. It felt, they're saying that the planning service had wanted to conduct strong engagement process with residents because of the high level of public interest and concern. A near neighbour consultation process involving letter drops to 140 properties have been undertaken, as well in a drop-in in the Darwin Green community rooms, which was was attended by local residents and residents association reps. And these actions, they note, are additional to what would normally be required as part of a conditions discharge application. So a consultation has also taken place with environmental health and highways officers. Comments were received from third parties, and as a result, additional information has been requested from the developer. And this was received on the 13th of November, so not long ago, and will be subject to a second formal period of consultation, so that will be out for public consultation. Local residents groups will be notified and obviously can use this period to make any comments. So there's no firm demolition date as yet. BDW, so that Barrett, David Wilson, they've commenced weekly updates to the local residents, and the demolition contractors are also doing the same. So the mitigation measures include dust suppression measures and a 24/7 operated telephone number to report any concerns during the demolition period. We'd also had a question about retail units, and the developer reports that there has been some interest, but they're currently unoccupied at the moment. I think they're hoping with the opening of the shared path, the residents will now have the option of a link to retail units along Histon Road, which would widen their choice of nearby retail destinations. We had a query about the shared path to Windsor Road. Residents had been worried about safety and solar-powered motion-activated lighting. Apparently, they've now changed to a mains-fed permanent lighting system in response to concerns, and a discharge condition application recently submitted by the developer to change the lighting and surfacing detail has been withdrawn and replaced with a non-material amendment concerning over the path surface. And that was from John Shuttlewood, who's our principal planning officer in the local planning authority. I don't know if anyone has any comments on that. I can't. Councillor Smith.
Yes, so the subject to Barrett's responding to the request for further details in respect of those discharge of condition submissions of the application could be considered at Joint Development Control Committee on the 12th of December. And if that's the case, then the demolition works won't be starting until the new year.
Thank you very much for the update. That's very useful to know. Thank you.
I think I'd also say about the pathway, the way in which it's designed, and also with the gates, the configuration of the gates, which creates places which people walking alone at night can't see through. It makes it an unattractive proposition for anybody who's quite young, or I think women in particular. And I haven't met a woman who would actually have professed to want to walk down that pathway.
Thank you very much. We'll let the planning team know about the comments and forward them the minutes, so that can obviously be fed back in. And obviously residents can comment through the usual process as well with the latest conditions. Is your hand still up, Councillor Smith, or is that a legacy hand? Okay, that's a legacy one. Okay, so if everyone's happy with that, we will move on to item 5, which is the Policing and Safer Neighbourhoods report on page 17 of your agenda. And for this item, we're joined by Sergeant Kevin Missick and Sarah Steggles, who's our Harm Reduction and Antisocial Behaviour Manager. If I could ask Sarah and Kevin to provide an update on the activities since they last attended the committee, that would be great. Thank you.
Sarah, do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first? I'll go first because she seems to have run away. Right, let me get to the
I
top.
was on mute.
That's all right. Shall I go first?
Yeah, you go first.
Wonderful. Okay, so scroll to the top of the reports. There are 4 areas of concern that came from last time. I'll address each one that's in there. So realistically, the first one was drug dealing and associated antisocial behaviour, so including threatening behaviour and safeguarding of young people. So again, this is some key partnership work that we're doing around here with some of a number of our partners. So the work is undertaken in these areas both directly by targeted enforcement action, but also by a number of key pieces of partnership work. The enforcement work has been targeted at times and locations which have been highlighted by calls made to the police, which emphasises the importance of people calling issues in. There have been various hotspots across the West Central area, notably Parker's Peace, Jesus Green and Rose Crescent. Officers from neighbourhood policing teams supported by both the Special Constabulary and members of the wider Constabulary have conducted high visibility patrols as well as plainclothes work to both disrupt antisocial behaviour and deal with offenders. As well as this targeted work, we've undertaken a number of pieces of partnership work to deal with the root causes of the issues and to look to deal with some of these issues before they become bigger problems. PC Weldon has carried out work with a number of retailers who trade in the areas of the city centre that are subject to these issues, and worked with CAMBAC, which is Cambridge Business Against Crime Partnership, to not only listen to and address their concerns, but also to ensure that they are reporting issues promptly and with a good level of detail to allow police to target patrol work to get the most out of our activities. PC Weldon has also been working with the youth accommodation providers within the area to work in partnership to ensure that young people who are at risk from antisocial behaviour or crime are effectively safeguarded. And this partnership-led response is in place for young people who are involved in crime and ASP, with a view to diverting them from doing further issues. This continues to be a part of our major work, and that will carry on because they're kind of key things. What's probably worthy of note around there is Jake has started some more targeted work with the YMCA, which, when they redrew the ward boundaries in the city, moved out of Trumpington and into the Market Ward. So that now comes under my team's jurisdiction, and he started doing some work with the YMCA to look at that. There was some recent stuff around Gresham Road, which I know was one of the public questions makes reference to. I think this is, well, my professional judgment is telling me this is a spill out from the stuff that's going on at the YMCA. So my hope is that get Jake to do some work around this area to look at working with the YMCA to kind of help them understand and the effect their residents are having, and also to look at reducing some of those issues. So that's kind of the current situation, and that's where we're going to go from there. Road safety, focusing on delivery mopeds and electric scooters, illegally using public highways, particularly those vehicles at night. Again, the issue of e-scooters continues to be addressed within the ongoing routine proactive enforcement engagement work, which is talking about the highlighted areas highlighted by road traffic collision data. These key junctions are most notably the Hills Road junction at the Catholic Church is the kind of largest single point in the ward where there has been issues. This enforcement action is happening twice a week at the moment, as we spoke about earlier, and is set to continue. The team have been actively engaging with delivery riders to ensure that they are acting in a safe and legal manner. As well as this enforcement action, we've been carrying out road safety inputs with the new student population. The Forces Casualty Reduction Officer attended the AOU Welcome event, and me and PC Bennett attended a number of college welcome events, and the message around safe cycling, bike lights, bike crime will pass to students. Now the clocks have changed. The team has started doing a number of lit scheme, which is the lights instead of tickets, which have been given out to a number of people. They were out earlier this week, and they have issued 60 tickets this week, and and I think Alice enjoyed it a little bit more than she realised, and I have a feeling she'll be out doing that again. So the lit scheme, I think, has been. I was quite impressed with the number of tickets they managed to get in 3 days, so that's quite good, and we'll be carrying on there. Next one is street begging. Again, this is one of the core functions of the team. There's well-established partnerships to deal with these issues. This includes both problem solving around people and locations, and the work to divert people into relevant support and help where appropriate. There are fortnightly meetings which deal with the cohort of the most problematic individuals, which work towards solutions to help them and to reduce the effect they have on the wider community. Since the last meeting, well, the last meeting I would have been at rather than your last meeting, the most notable result is success for the team is PCO Flynn had with dealing with a repeat offender who had for some time been the most problematic individual in the city centre, and after hard work with the individual was sentenced to prison for a considerable time for breaching his CBO. There was a link to that. This work continues to kind of use that as an example. This week we held a partnership meeting with ourselves, a city council support worker, a housing officer, a probation worker, and a mental health social worker, with a view to reducing the impact this person has when they come out of prison. So one of the kind of the key things that, and I'm sure Sarah would say the same, is she has a Stuart, I can always forget, assertive street engagement officer. Is that Stuart's job title, Sarah?
Street support officer.
Street support officer. He's just Stuart to me. We work quite closely with Stuart, and we look at those kind of things, and we deal with people as a individual. It's very, very person-centered piece of work. So we look to do those things. So that's a key piece of work. That's led by Lee Brown and Laura O'Flynn for me. And finally, it's some work around the nighttime economy, about frequent users in the nighttime economy. Work continues in partnership with the venues themselves to understand where and when these offences take place, as well as making sure that the venues are doing what they should be doing within their own venues. We have a dedicated police response, which ensures that the nighttime economy is a safe environment, and this work has been folded into the normal work that the officers carry out. Working with all of the partners in this environment, but a good understanding of what normal looks like, and we can target our resources in the right area to deal with issues. One of the key things that we've done to kind of address those issues is to ensure that officers understand that issues within our nighttime economy don't simply happen in venues. They happen outside of venues, and they happen in the darker spaces of our city centre. Around a year, 18 months ago, we started some work around the Market Square, and that's that kind of understanding that some of the issues take place other than somewhere else, other than in the venues, is that the Market Square was a key piece of kind of understanding in that. And that has now led to the Market Square at night certainly being a much nicer place to be than it probably was 2 years ago. And there has been a reduction in sort of crime, disorder, and other issues that have been around there. That's the report. I'm happy, Chair, to just answer some questions now, if that would be easier, or what do you want to do?
I don't know, Sarah, do you want to cover your part first and we'll take questions at the end? Is that okay with everybody? I think no one's objected. Is that okay, Sarah? Would you mind running through your part? Thank you. Oh, you're muted at the moment.
Oh, I need to learn, don't I? I'll try and summarise because it's quite a lengthy report, I think. So I'll just go through, I'll summarise it anyway. So we continue to work on the CAMS Against County Lines project, which is coordinated by the Cambridge City Council on behalf of the Community Safety Partnership Board. And this is a project where we're raising awareness of county lines and how young people can get involved in that, be criminally exploited. The project is currently in the process of expanding, with a key stage 2 video being produced, which will be rolled out to primary schools in the new year. We've also produced a flyer to be shared with various agencies, and this was included within the most recent Cambridge Matters publication. We also coordinate the multi-agency peer groups and places meeting, which is a monthly meeting where we discuss young people who are at risk of being criminally exploited. It's a partnership meeting, and we have agencies, police, schools, social care, etc., who sit around the table and discuss what we can do to prevent these children being caught up in criminal exploitation. And we follow a contextual safeguarding approach and look at alternative activity for young people to positively engage with. With regards to city centre wider issues, including the street-based begging and criminality, we have a problem-solving approach which has been adopted in the form of partnership meetings between the community safety team, police colleagues, city centre stakeholders such as Grand Arcade and the Grafton Centre and CAMBAC. And this has allowed for a more holistic approach to provide professionals the opportunity to work and hear directly from those affected by the behaviour. We're doing a lot of work in sort of car parks and places like that where there's street-based antisocial behaviour. As part of the ongoing cycle crime prevention work, and the Save Our Cycles campaign encourages the public to register their bike on Bike Register. The Police and Crime Commissioner's Office and Cambridge City Council funded cycle marking kits, and CamCycle's Save Our Cycle campaign leaflet continues to be promoted at bike marking events across the city. And the Streets and Open Spaces Development Team have trialled the respect signage on public spaces in the city. The City Council Street Support Officer, so that's Stuart, who Kevin referred to, has been engaging with the street community to discuss behaviours and consequences, but also supports them to access services and such as support and accommodation. This has been really successful in tackling some encampments in the city centre, and the winter provision has now been opened, and the street support officer is encouraging individuals to engage with that accommodation as well. The ASB team has successfully applied for an extension of an existing injunction order with one individual who was particularly problematic in the city centre. He was also very vulnerable to working very closely with a multitude of support agencies to safeguard him. The community safety team has also made a video funded by Cambridge Bid to promote the initiative Cambridge Street Aid. That video can be found on the website, and there's obviously a link there if anybody wants to view that. This initiative continues to raise awareness of safe ways in which members of the public can give to individuals rather than giving to those on the street, directly on the streets. All the money goes back again in the form of grants. We've also been involved with the installation of 2 refuge points within the market square, including a point of safety for vulnerable members of the public within the nighttime economy, which are connected via intercom and visible by CCTV operatives 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The refuge points have been installed. They are not yet fully operational as they are waiting to be connected to the control room, but this is due to happen imminently. This has been joint work between City Council, the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, CCTV Control Room, CAMBAC, Cambridge Bid and the police. We're also working closely with CCTV colleagues to increase the number of cameras and areas of coverage in the market square in order to increase community safety, particularly for members of the public who are at increased risk of harm or the vulnerable. Funding has been provided by the Office of Police and Crime Commissioner for 2 new CCTV cameras to be installed in the market square and the market passage. These areas are considered to have high levels of ASB, crime and disorder, particularly in relation to the nighttime economy. And it's hoping that the increased CCTV in these areas will act as a deterrent to ASB and crime, and it will provide the live monitoring and surveillance that will assist police to deal with ongoing incidents. The Community Problem Solving Coordinator and Youth Liaison Officer have recently attended the Rose Quarter Association meeting along with police colleagues. The aim of this meeting was for the community safety team members and police to meet professionals representing the businesses in the Rose Crescent area of the city centre and to discuss concerns of ongoing ASB and crime currently ongoing to improve issues in the area. During this meeting, we were able to explain how individuals can report incidents of ASB to the City Council and the importance of doing so. The contextual safeguarding was also discussed in relation to the concerns around young people in Rose Crescent area, and work is ongoing by various agencies to address these concerns, and obviously also through the peer groups and places meeting. Support for individuals rough sleeping and begging in the area was also explored, including the provision for individuals during the winter period. For example, the additional bed spaces at Crossways from the 1st of November. There were high levels of engagement during the meeting, and members of the Rose Quarter Association stated they felt reassured to hear of the ongoing multi-agency work and had increased confidence in the reporting incidents of ASB and crime. And that's the end of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I can just see John put a comment in the chat to say that I think Rose Crescent is now covered by CCTVs. Welcome to John Richards from our Public Realm team who's joined us. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Sarah or Kevin? I have to say I'm very impressed to see the amount of work that is going on at the moment. That's very good to hear, so thank you. Please do put your hand up if you've got any questions. Councillor Smith.
There's been recently a drug dealing and drug taking with the Carlton Histon Road, in Windsor Road, and in the Histon Road Recreation Ground. And we have been encouraging members of the public to report incidents, things that they've been observing. Has there been any action taken, and if so, has it been effective?
One of the interesting things is me and Sergeant Jeffrey, who runs the North team, often have a disagreement about where the boundaries are. So sometimes it's a bit of a standing joke between the two of us that I frequently forget that I actually cover that part of the area and make her do it for me. I know her team have been out there. I know she has recently done some enforcement work in that area, particularly around there and the wreck on Histon Road. So the team are out there. There are no sort of specific results I can pass back to you at the moment, but definitely all reporting is good reporting. As I often say, it's like building a puzzle, and sometimes the last part you put into the puzzle, you suddenly have that epiphany moment to realise it's a picture of a dog and you weren't sure what it was before. So I would always encourage people to go online, report stuff to Crime Stoppers. We are aware of the issues down Histon Road, and like I say, between myself and Sergeant Jeffrey's team, we have been sort of down there looking at those issues.
Thanks very much. If you could let us know if you actually managed to control the situation, that would be really good to hear from you. Thank you, Kevin.
But yep.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Councillor Martinelli, I think you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I guess I was just going to speak to the Gresham Road area issues, which obviously I know you've had an oral question about as well. So I just wanted to get a bit of a feel for it. Obviously, you know, as you say, it's slightly new to the West Central area, but I guess speaking to the residents there, it does seem like things have changed recently over the last year or so. And I was wondering why that might be with regards to the YMCA issues in particular. So what has changed about the YMCA residential makeup or otherwise that has seen this change or worsening of behaviour? I know around the ward previously, a lot of the issues we've had with drug taking has been kind of you know, a lot of it's been tied up with rough sleeping, for example, whereas that doesn't seem quite the same issue as here. So I guess I'd be interested in your insight both on that and also as to whether you in your data you've seen any increase in reporting of incidents around that area, because the residents tell us they are reporting a lot, but I don't know if that's actually true or filtered through.
So interestingly, like I say, Sarah, I will go on record saying that Chloe is an amazing member of your team and does a wonderful.
She was brilliant. I thought
she does a lot of work, and her ability to get money out of the PCC, I think, is a fundamental skill that we should all wish that we had. But I don't. I'm a policeman. I just don't understand that. I did have a look at the result, the calls reports down Gresham Road last night. There's not a vast amount. There are reports, and they all look like they're coming from the same person. Is the kind of look at it. There's some criminal damage. There's some other criminality that's gone on there. I did have a conversation a month or so ago, maybe, with one of the officers who kind of attended one of the calls there, and we have had that conversation. In terms of the change of the makeup at the YMCA, I don't think there has been. I think the YMCA has a sort of what can only be described as a wide and eclectic group of people housed there. Everything from sort of students to vulnerable people to young people who are kind of potentially perpetrating more than they are at risk. It's a very wide kind of thing, and like I say, Jake on my team is at the beginning of a piece of work around the YMCA. So what we're doing now is increasing our engagement with them, trying to get an understanding of who is there and what the risk is. I think as to why it's changed, I don't know. That's an interesting question, to be honest, and one I'll probably set to Jake to try and understand. I think it could well just be who has been there. I think historically the issues that the YMCA have caused have tended to go out of its front door and onto Parker's Piece, and that tends to be where historically the issues have been around the toilet and around the kind of that front area there, not so much down kind of Gresham Road and out round towards there. And that could just be a case of people coming, kind of hiding from the natural surveillance of people going past them. But it is one we're aware of. I'm aware that Chloe is talking about potentially one of the deployable CCTV cameras. I know she asked that question yesterday. I have responded to her. I think we'll get more bang for our buck from working with the YMCA is my gut feeling. I think that's where some engagement with the staff, some empowerment of the staff, and some using them to engage with the residents. I think we'll get more out of that than a camera. At the moment, I'm not saying I don't think it's a great idea. I just think that engagement and that multi-agency stuff and kind of doing that, I think we'll get more out of than necessarily putting a camera up. But yeah, we're aware of it. We're looking at it, and I think my plan is to wind that into the YMCA work that Jake's doing.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, did you want to add anything? I saw you put your hand up and it came down. So.
Yeah, no, I was just going to talk about the work Chloe's been doing, but obviously that's already been picked up. So yeah, we have had some report to the ASB team. We are sort of working closely with the police, and we do have an ASB officer who's also assigned to that as a case as well. So we are all working together, hopefully, to resolve this.
Thank you very much. This will probably come up in the public question later, so we'll cover that then. I think Councillor Bick, you're next.
Yeah, I had a couple of comments. First of all, to say that to thank Kevin and his team and Sarah and hers for what they've done on the last on the basis of the last objectives that we highlighted. Just three things to say. One, about the e-scooters issue. I just want to impress on officers in general that this is a really widespread concern that exists amongst the public. It gets mentioned to me more than any other thing really at the moment, and that's not because I'm necessarily asking about it even. And it's not linked only to high accident areas, it's removing people's sense of safety and an autonomy on paths, in particular across open spaces, in a way which really shouldn't be happening. It's kind of taking away something from people, some sense of freedom and safety. And I just wanted to ask whether, you can expand away from just looking at well-known traffic hotspots, accident hotspots, because I think you could combine this with tackling cyclists without lights, for example, and to do it perhaps along some of the kind of well-known, well-used paths that actually aren't necessarily main roads for traffic, but places like Fair Street, like the crossing on East Road. These are really important places where there's a lot of people on two-wheeled transport. The second thing I wanted to ask was Sarah about the rough sleeping and the street begging. I wondered whether she was noticing any reduction in that now the winter accommodation was open, because in one way of looking at it, if the accommodation, which I think is unconditional accommodation, it starts to be available, then one would expect that to see a reduction of people actually on the streets because there is somewhere else to go. And the third point was I've raised with Kevin a particular problem about noisy drivers revving up vehicles to and four wheeled around the crossroads of East Road, Parkside, Mill Road, and Gonville Place, and from people who live in the flats overlooking that. And I wondered whether there is anything to say about what can be done about that. Kevin, please.
Right. 3 questions. One for Sarah, 2 for me. Although I did speak to Stuart the other day, Sarah, so I might know the answer to the other one as well. So in terms of where we can do it, I think you make a good point, Councillor Beck, around it folding into some of the other work we do. I think what's also interesting, there was an article in the BBC about Voi and King's Parade and issues that blind people were having. So I think that was in the press earlier last week. So it is something we're aware of. Again, I sometimes I feel like a broken record, but ad hoc enforcement does go on ad hoc when my team are out and about on foot, particularly John, because he's out and about a lot of the time. He will be taking those kind of micro pieces of enforcement against people who aren't doing those things. At the moment, we have a increase in resourcing. My team is now fully staffed, which is quite nice. It's been a while since we're fully staffed, and we currently have 3 extra student officers with us at the moment, which is quite nice. So we are actually able to kind of make a bigger impact than some of these things. So hence that's why we're going to doing a lit scheme. So I can do some tasking around there. The reason we picked the KSI data to work on is we have to start somewhere, is the honest answer. It's about it being safe. It's about the risk that goes on there. But Councillor Big, I take your point. In terms of a reduction in rough sleeping, there are still some people in the car parks. I know because my team were down there the other day. I think a number of people have Crossways is full, is my understanding from speaking to Stuart. There are some people who have kind of gone in and their behaviour has been such that they've lost their place, and there's one specific individual who's causing some issues around Grand Arcade that we are going to be taking some fairly pointed enforcement action with, in a view to hopefully reminding him that being in Crossways is a lot better than being in prison. Maybe he should accept the offers of help that he's being made. So I think there's a reduction. The problem is the more challenging ones are quite hard to get to go in. A lot want to, and some don't, but some do. And in terms of the loud vehicles and now mopeds, Special Constable Chris Palmius works with our team quite a lot, and he's about to undertake some training which is linked to the noise. We've got some noise measuring equipment for motor vehicles, so we can work out where somebody's altered their exhaust and stuff like that. So I've spoken to Chris, and Chris is happy to kind of take that little bit of work on for me. So he will look at that. Again, it's not going to be a major piece of our work. So what I would suggest, as Councillor Smith mentioned earlier, it's that reporting. It's people going online and telling us, so that we can build a picture of when I get the opportunity to do that, get the team to do that work, I know where they're going to be going. So if we know that, like, as you describe, it's outside Parkside Towers or on the corner there, that's where I can direct Chris to go and get the most sort of bang for the buck that I can out of the time that I can get him to kind of address that behaviour. Does that answer your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Sarah, did you want to add anything, or are you happy Kevin's covered everything?
I think Kevin's covered everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much. Councillor Holloway, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you both of you for the reports and everything that you're doing. It all sounds really good. My question is about a meeting I had recently with the Housing Association Peabody and with some residents at Cockcroft Place, which is a housing association site in Newnham. And basically, the residents were saying that there had been some incidents. This was a few months ago now, where there had been police coming to the site, and they were telling the housing officer from Peabody, and then the housing officer was saying, well, actually, we weren't informed about that. And so basically the question is that Peabody were suggesting that in Bedfordshire, they get told when something happens at one of their sites, whereas here they don't. I don't know whether that's actually true. And
I'm
wondered,
going to go with I bet
Sergeant
it
Missy.
isn't.
Right. Yeah, it
There-
might well not be.
I
just
lay
wondered
money.
what
If
think.
you look at the social housing that sits, maybe not so much in the west central area, but if you look at the social housing that sits across the north of the city and south of the city, it is a phenomenal amount. We are engaged with a number of housing providers. Routinely, I will get an email, say for example, Cyrenians, which does a lot of kind of high needs housing, so they tend to house the people that have been homeless. So I speak to their services manager quite regularly, but that's because she approaches me and says to me, Kevin, this person saying that, Kevin, this person saying that. So routinely, I don't have the time in my day. And also, in terms of data protection, I shouldn't be telling potentially it's to routinely just blurt out that we went to somebody's address doesn't necessarily feel proportionate. I get the impression that that's them kind of blaming us for them not knowing their business.
It may well be. I just wanted
No,
to get your take on
I
it.
don't have an issue with the question, but when you sit there thinking, if they're having issues, they can come to us. The city council run a problem solving group, which they'd be more than welcome to sit on. I imagine, Sarah, wouldn't there? There's a social landlord in the city.
And I was going to say, if we get reports coming through to us from any housing association, we would from a tenant, a resident of any housing association, we would always be making contact with that housing association and passing those concerns on and offering them the opportunity to come along to the problem solving group with their cases as well. So we do try to make sure that is fed back where we get those complaints, and we'll link in with the police if need be as well.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you very much. I can't see any other hands up. So we have 3 public questions that have been submitted. I think they've been circulated to everybody. But I think we have covered broadly quite a few of them, but I will go through them. And then at the end, I will just revisit our priorities that we want to recommend. We can't vote for, but we can recommend. So Claire very kindly just put the public questions up. So the first one is talking about the privately owned, so non-VOI, powered scooters on the roads. I think, as Councillor Bick has alluded, certainly it's very present in my inbox and on doorsteps. I'm pretty sure it's the same in Newnham and Castle, I would guess, across open spaces particularly. So I think these questions, well, in fact, question 1 and question 2 both relate to this. One about more generally what's being done to enforce it, and particularly then about the green spaces. So I don't know if Kevin or Sarah might wish to comment. And we've got John as well on the call, who has just pointed out in the chat that the King's speech, as I mentioned earlier, didn't formalise the legal scooters, the VOI scooters or other similar schemes like Lime. So we've got a long period before it looks like anything formal will happen. So I don't know if any of the officers want to comment on particularly, well, question 1, which is general, and question 2, particularly about Cross Jesus Green, Midsummer Common and Stourbridge Commons. Thank you.
What I'll say, Chair, I'll jump in quickly, is I think we've kind of talked that to death a little bit. There's nothing on there that I would say that's any different to what we talked about already. The respect signage has gone out onto Midsummer Common, I believe. I think that we've kind of talked about that.
Oh, we've lost you, Kevin. You're on mute.
I'd stop talking as well. No, I think we've covered that. I think my gut feeling is that's what we've talked about now. And the thing that Councillor Beak was talking about, maybe looking at some enforcement away from the KSI stuff on an ad hoc basis, is something we can maybe look at. But other than that, there's not really a lot more to say on those ones.
Thank you very much. And then we have a third question, which Claire is just scrolling down to, which is well, again, relating to the Gresham Road, I think Councillor Martinelli has already alluded to this. So we've had issues around antisocial behaviour and criminal behaviour, drug usage. Drug use is interesting. It seems to be a lot of the sort of inhaling gas things, which then unfortunately leads to antisocial behaviour at the site because people are sort of high on it or whatever. So again, I think we've probably covered a fair amount of this, but again, if anyone would like to comment, please go ahead.
Only thing I'd say is interestingly, the law changed recently. It's now it's now an offence to be in possession of nitrous oxide where it wasn't previously. But again, I mean, that's interesting. The nitrous oxide is one of the things that helped me to draw the line from there to the YMCA, because they recently evicted somebody, and in their room they had a large number of cylinders that, I'm getting a load of feedback. No, anyway, yeah, there was one of the ones in their room, and that's they'd evicted somebody, and that's where some of the things had been going on. So yeah, nitrous oxide is now illegal to be in possession of. It's I think, Class C drug.
Thank you very much. Sarah, were you going to say something?
So for the record, Chloe has done ward visits with 2 councillors, and also I think 2 local residents came along to that as well. We've got a resident keeping a diary. One of those diaries has been returned now, and Chloe's also working with partners, including YMCA, to sort of discuss any concerns around young people and activity there. So there is a lot of work going on in relation to those concerns at the moment, but it's still relatively early days, I'd say.
Thank you very much. And certainly it does make you realise, in terms of designing out crime, there's a set of very low-level garages near there which probably wouldn't be built nowadays, because it does provide a fairly unsupervised space, unfortunately, not very overlooked. Thank you very much for that. I draw everyone's attention to page 19 of the agenda, where we've set our recommended priorities. To start the ball rolling, I would suggest that we ask the police and Sarah's team to continue with the 4 main points. So one related to drug dealing and antisocial behaviour, and particularly safeguarding of young people. The second one was road safety, so talking about our e-bikes and e-mopeds and deliveries. I potentially would put forward that maybe we could ask that to focus particularly on the open spaces and places like Histon Road and Gresham Road, where we know there are hotspots, maybe not for accidents, but for activity. So I don't know whether people would agree with that. The third priority was street begging, and the fourth priority was supporting the police campaign on drugs, with focusing on frequent users and the nighttime economy. So I'm putting that forward as a start of a 10, but I'm very happy to take amendments or changes if people want to suggest anything.
All sounds very sensible to me, Chair.
All I'd say, Chair, is 3, 1 and 4 sound very similar. It might make sense to just have them as one thing.
I think that
aiming at safeguarding young people from criminality sounds like a kind of broader topic, but those two both feel quite similar.
Okay, so in effect we can merge point 1 and point 4, so add in the nighttime economy. I think I'm mindful that obviously we don't have another area committee in this form again, so I think I would, if people agree, would like to have some reference to the open spaces, because I think once we move to the lighter evenings, it will become more of an issue again there. So for both scooters and for drug dealing. So if people are happy, nobody is shaking their head or objecting. So I will put those forward, if that's right, Claire, in the minutes as our continuing priorities. Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any comments to make? I don't know if John wants to say anything. I think we've covered everything, John Richardson, but let me know if not. Brilliant. Thank you very much. So we are moving on to the next item, but before we do that, I'm just going to ask Claire to check the Democratic Services inbox. There is nothing. I am going to suggest, in the interests of having a very short break, should we just take a 3-minute break now in case people want to go and have a quick cup of tea or use the facilities, and we will recommence in about 3 minutes, if that's okay, with the final item on the agenda. Thank you very much. I will see you in a moment.
Chair, I'm probably going to duck out unless you have any more questions for me.
Fantastic. We're now live again. Welcome back to West Central Area Committee. We're now moving on to agenda item 6, which is the Environmental Improvement Programme Project Submission Summary Report. And we're joined by James Ogles and John Richards, who are going to introduce this item. So if I could ask James and John to let us know a bit more about this, and everyone should have the A3 papers with the bids and recommended decisions on. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'll try and keep this introduction short to leave a bit more time to discuss the actual EIP programme at the end of this, really. Firstly, I'd like to just draw your attention to there was a little bit of a mistake in the report under 3.11. It didn't actually name the correct area, and also the electronic version had an old link, although that's been updated now. But that old link should have been replaced with signpost into the Environmental Improvement Programme webpage.
I gather that's now updated online, Claire,
Yeah.
just inform me.
Yeah. As many of you are aware, EIP has been running for quite a long time, well, since 2004. And during this time, it's been subject to periodic reviews, and following those, there's been adaptations to the programme, which have been made to try and ensure the programme continues to meet the council priorities and it continues to kind of run smoothly and does what we kind of want it to do. There are now 2 forms of EIP funding, local area and strategic. Tonight we'll be concentrating on the local area funding for West Central, obviously. You're probably aware we ran an EIP funding programme last year after a few years pause where we all had to obviously concentrate on other things. Things were happening nationally and internationally. This year we ran again an open application process which started on the 28th of June and closed on the 17th of August. There also was a public opportunity to select any ideas put forward and like or comment on them. This ran until the end of September. So the report asked the committee to do 3 things. One is note the funding available for the area, which for West Central is 20,373, and to consider the new EIP ideas and projects that were submitted as part of the application process against the EIP funding availability and the eligibility criteria. I've got my notes have gone now. Then, following that, to consider the recommendations made in tables 1 and 2 in Appendix B, discuss and ask for clarifications, and then obviously any questions. Ideally, the committee needs to, by the end of the item, give a clear recommendation of their priorities they would like to put forward within the available EIP funding. Table 1, which is on those A3 sheets, summarises the project idea submission information, describes the project, estimates the cost, tells you where it's located, and it also says the number of people in support and any kind of negative comments received, and then an officer rating, which obviously is on a traffic light sort of system. There was 10 projects which we've put into West Central area, with an estimated cost of 41,300, so obviously quite a lot more than the actual funding we got, more than double. Hopefully this year we've made it a little bit easier for committee discussion, as we've outlined in table 2 the officer recommendations. Please also note in table 5 the strategic projects across the city that are being recommended at the moment. The recommendation in the report, both for strategic and for area, will be shared with the Executive Councillor, Councillor Carlin, and he will, if it's required, he will listen to this discussion today and kind of understand where the committee's coming from. He will then hopefully approve the West Central Area EIP and the other area funding programmes and the strategic EIP funding in December, and then take it as a record of decision to the Environment Community and Environment Scrutiny Committee in January. This is kind of now the opportunity for the committee to discuss and consider if there are any more appropriate projects within the bids received and whether the committee has any different recommendations to the officer's report. We have actually had one query in regard to West Central, which is in regard to one of the projects is Windsor Road, Verge biodiversity improvements, and there were some reservations about that project, and these included lack of local support. In fact, pointing out that many locals actively commented against the project, and some fairly strongly, and also, well, mainly because some people have prior knowledge of these type of and verge improvement schemes and see them, the delivery product, it's sometimes in a negative way. So they might actually see the investment as a bit of a waste of money, as they'll see the verge looking scruffy and it can encourage weeds into the area. And if not maintained properly, it has been known to, these kind of schemes have been known to reverse back to former grass habitat. And also it was pointed out there is another similar project in the area which was approved in last year's EIP programme, which actually is seen as a trial for verges, and they felt that actually let's get that one delivered, and if it's successful, that can showcase this type of biodiversity improvement project. Anyway, so apart from that, really, I'm probably looking at that project and others. That's the only kind of query we've had. But now I suppose we can just open it up to the committee if they've got any questions for myself or John.
Thank you very much, James and John. That's very helpful. It's very useful to have a summary of the bids at the end as well. Thank you. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. John, go ahead.
Chair, apologies, I was a bit slow getting my hand up. Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to add to what James had just run through, that in relation to that Windsor Road area scheme, WC12, if the area committee does wish to support it this evening still, and that's subsequently endorsed by the executive councillor, and when we get to the scheme development stage, we find that actually there isn't any appetite locally to take forward those enhancements, we're not going to press ahead with them against sort of local residents and local councillors' wishes. So we would simply stop work on the scheme at that point, and any funding set aside for it would effectively be put back into the area pots for reconsideration for other schemes. So if you do wish to support it tonight, it doesn't necessarily mean it's absolutely going to happen. Obviously, if we find when we get to consultation there isn't the support for it. That was all, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I could just see James put his hand up. Was that about this, or did you
Yes,
wait for Councillor Glassberg? Is that all right, Councillor Glassberg?
It is about Windsor, yeah. I know Councillor Glassberg put a hand up before me. Sorry about that. Pushed in. Yeah, the person who was kind of discussing it with me was kind of saying, could we use it on other projects within the kind of programme you're putting forward? And yes, that was a possibility. And Histon Road Rec biodiversity improvements was mentioned as a possibility as well, to move some of that funding elsewhere if the committee felt Windsor probably shouldn't go ahead or not. But I mean, that's up to you to discuss. Right, that's me done.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Glassberg, go ahead.
Yeah, the question that I had was actually about the Windsor Road project. It's good to hear what you said about it, because I was a bit concerned that so many people actually did seem to be not very happy with it. I also wondered, I understood that these projects were not supposed to be something that was going to require ongoing maintenance costs. And it did seem that this one might be something that was going to need it, especially if local people are not committed to it and not prepared to be working on it themselves.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, did you want to come on the same topic? I'm guessing. Oh, you're muted, Councillor Smith.
I mean, against that criteria about who's involved on the scheme, residents were not consulted. They're not engaged. They've actively opposed it, and it doesn't command the local councillors' support. I think that this evening, and what James mentioned was the already approved wildflower verge scheme for the neighbouring streets, which hasn't yet been brought forward. And I have consulted all the residents, or at least 2/3 of the residents, and I found that whilst there are some people who are supportive, there are a lot of people that actively don't want it. So, and one of the main reasons is that they see that the succession planting comes through very, very quickly, and if that detracts from the attractiveness of the wildflowers when they are in flower, and then it just looks scruffy for the rest of the year. But if we use that scheme to put in a soil layer with very pure low levels of nutrition, that will help the wildflowers to be successful for a longer period. And with the engagement that's being carried out, we will have the active involvement of the residents who want these wildflowers outside their houses. So I think if we can progress that scheme and then demonstrate that it can work, if you're prepared to come and support it, then others can follow. So it could have a demonstration effect. But I don't see any value in ploughing ahead with the scheme where we already know people are not interested in it, and we'd be better off discussing how we might redistribute the money to other schemes that have got support, not necessarily Histon Recreation Road. That could be one of them, but others in the other wards, and then we know we're allocating the money for schemes that have got the support of the local community.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Councillor Ray, were you wanting to speak on the same?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
So just two points to make. Firstly, there is currently a consultation going on about the redevelopment of part of Windsor Road, which I think is likely to overlap with this, and I think it's sensible to get that sorted out first before any scheme like this is considered. And secondly, to agree with Councillor Smith about the mixed support for this scheme. My observation is that these wildflower plantings work best where you have actually quite a lot of land that is not being walked on. So I would point out something like Ditton Walk, where you have some really spectacular wildflower, but they're not right against the road, and there's a lot of land there, so people are not walking on it. If the natural vegetation will revert to grass if people tread on wildflowers and consolidate the ground. And as I say, wildflowers are not actually require a huge amount of effort to keep them looking good. And will look quite scruffy in the latter part of the year and through the winter in a way that grass doesn't. So I think I would concur that we should go ahead with a trial where people are happy to support it and to put the effort in to maintain the areas and take it from there. If that inspires the Windsor Road residents to take it up, then so be it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ray. I can see that Councillor Bick has his hand up. I don't know if this is on the same item. Councillor Bick, are you happy for me to just go back to officers first, or did you want to speak on this particular item about Windsor Road?
It's a different item, so I can wait.
So I think from what I'm hearing, there is a suggestion from councillors, both county and city, that that particular bid is not taken forward. So I would note that then obviously frees up the money that was allocated. So I'd urge people to have a look at other schemes. John or James, do you wish to comment on that, or is that okay with you?
If I may, Chair, just very, very briefly, that very, very helpful comments from Councillor. So thank you very much for that. I think James has possibly also given some thought to what might potentially come forward as an alternative. So I'll hand over to him if he wants to pick that up.
Well, no, I spoke to Councillor Smith, I think earlier this week, and we did talk about can we bolster Histon Rec particularly with some of that money, because there's some concern that there's not enough money within that recommended bid to achieve the benefits that we've kind of outlined, or the benefits that we could potentially achieve. So it would be better to maybe put some of the money towards that. And also the project is strongly supported for Histon Rec, and it's in the same ward, and there's been no negative comments for it. There is a bit more. There is a drive to try and get more active community involvement in the management of the rec through friends of, and sort of some investment in the space would obviously, again, sort of help to try and actually actively do something there. So there was that, and there was also some talk about tree damage on the border from a nearby development, and maybe some of the money could be used to mitigate some of the impacts that may or may not have had. So that was the only one that we looked at in the list where we felt potentially, but we could always just bolster a few of the others as well if you wanted to. But it's just thinking which ones would work well.
Thank you very much, James. So I suggest we'll take questions from other councillors about any other particular bids they agree or disagree with, and then perhaps at the end we can then look back and decide where we might wish to allocate. I think it's £4,800. So I think Councillor Bick, you were next.
Okay, yes, Chair. I wanted to say something about the WC7, which is about access to Christ pieces. It's got my name on it, but actually I put this in on behalf of the Christ Pieces Residents Association, this was not recommended by officers, but I have talked to a series of officers this week, and I really don't think that the point about soft paths conflicting with tree roots is a relevant point on this, because the gap between the trees along Emmanuel Road is 6.5 metres. We're talking here about what would definitely be a secondary path, and one which would be permeable, and according to the tree officer, would most likely make sense as a no-dig path, or that does involve a slight indentation in the land, but not dug with foundations into it. I feel that there is in the neighbourhood a sense in which people, there's obviously a desire line to use to walk across Christ Pieces. It makes sense for people. The fence is often broken. I mean, who knows why that really is, but it indicates a desire line. And when it was broken recently, people started to sort of burn informal paths across the grass. I have raised with officers the possibility of just say, like, don't let's talk paths here at all. Let's get rid of the fence across that whole stretch, which we have got some examples of in other parts, other open spaces. But officers are keen to retain the fence in general along there, because it makes sure that it doesn't get used, the grass doesn't get used for parking. So I mean, I think the best solution is to do this by keeping the fence, by having a formal gap in it, having a soft surface, no dig path from it across the grass to the nearest existing path, and enable people to take advantage of it in a logical and sensible way for people who kind of live kind of in that immediate vicinity, and see that we've obviously got huge paths for the sort of pedestrian superhighway across New Square from the Grafton area to the city centre, but you know, these people are living off centre from that, and it's been a continuous request so long as I've been a councillor, and it would be lovely to be able to oblige that. And so I would like to argue that back on the list, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bick. Does anyone else have anything to say on that particular request to move WC7 back on, or on anything else, either in their ward or other wards, to speak for or against? Because at the moment we have, well, 4 bids listed, so that'll be the Ancient Willow, Histon Road Rec, Ascension Parish and St Clement's Church, and we're removing WC12. Councillor Glassberg.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really glad to see that the willow tree is put forward for support, because I know that this is something that a lot of people across the city, not just in Newnham, have been very keen on. Obviously, the entrance to Grantchester Meadows is something that hundreds of people go across frequently. I'm afraid that it is really sad what has happened there, because there did used to be considerable understory and planting under that tree, and it's really only in the last couple of years that it's got so that the parking has made the soil so compacted there. Residents have tried to plant more things there and to try to protect it by putting sort of little logs and things across it, but these have actually been there's been quite a lot of aggression about it. Plants have been torn up, saplings have been pulled out, which is really quite upsetting for people. So I think it will be great if the council can implement this as soon as possible. And I also wanted to raise the point, I mean, it would actually complement the work that was made a priority by this committee last year, actually, on the other side of the Grantchester footpath. Because there's 3 trees there. Well, there were 4 trees. One of them has already been killed off by cars, but there's 3 trees remaining there. And last time the council, this committee, proposed putting some logs around to protect those trees. And it's a bit frustrating. I mean, I guess it is for the officers as well that this hasn't happened yet. There have been meetings with residents. Residents are very keen to support this, want to get on with planting around the trees. But apparently, I mean, they had meetings with the officers in March and May, and the work was actually going to be carried out in July. Notices were put up asking people not to park there so that the work could be completed, but the contractor never turned up apparently. And so that has been, I think that's been a big problem, is getting a contractor. Anyway, today a resident contacted me to say that they had been speaking with the officer and have recommended another contractor to them. So I just hope that can happen now quite quickly, and the work can be completed on both sides there to protect the trees there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have anything to add, or does James and John want to comment?
I think the only thing we kind of probably need from the committee is kind of a clearer picture of what we want to do with Windsor. Do we want to not do Windsor, and do we want to bolster other projects, and do we want to put WC7 back on Christ Pieces? That's what seems to have been said, but
yeah, that
I would agree.
I think we have a consensus to withdraw WC7. I didn't hear anyone speak in favour of that. So then the question is, Councillor Bick has put forward reinstating WC7, which I need to check, but I think was a similar amount. That's actually, right. And whether we then just move that money across, or whether people would rather redistribute some of it. I don't know, Councillor Bick, do you have a view on? I'm assuming you're proposing WC7 be reinstated, in effect just swapping it with Windsor Road.
Well, I mean, Yeah, I mean, if that's the only change we make, that would fit numerically, wouldn't it? Yeah, I'm happy to hear what other people have to say.
Oh, and John has his hand up. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Chair. It was a question for Councillor Bick, actually, and just to ask whether the council's open spaces asset manager, Anthony French, had been able to contact Councillor Bick.
Yes, I have had a lengthy conversation with Anthony. Yeah, and that was the conversation about the fence and the fact that he would like to retain the principle of the fence along there. He personally didn't have the objection that I think you believed he did have. And so the people I have talked to are Anthony and Matt McGrath, the tree officer, and yourself, of course.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Glassberg.
Yeah, just a quick point on that. I mean, I think we have all agreed that the Windsor Road one shouldn't go ahead if the residents are not happy about it. But I just wonder, does this funding have to be allocated at this meeting? Because it does seem to me that there's quite a lot of, I mean, it may be that Councillor Bick's proposal is the best one. It certainly fits numerically, but is it the best one in terms of the priority that we should be giving, in terms of what the feedback that we've had from people on these other projects? I just wonder, do we have to make this decision at this moment, or should we be considering a bit more what other projects this could be spent on?
And Councillor Smith, do you want to come in?
Well, we're not making a decision, Councillor Glassberg.
No, okay.
We're
Recommendation.
We're making a recommendation, and it will be formalised, I think, in the January committee cycle. So I think it's in, and of course this area committee is going to go on pause. So we won't be convening again anytime soon, and therefore I think we need to settle the matter. I noticed that there's a lot of public support for the path. It's a busy area of the town, and Councillor Bick knows his patch, and I'd like to support it in a cross-party manner. So yeah, thank you, Councillor Bick. I know you've been having a tough time of it recently. I think that would be a reasonable, fair distribution of the monies that are available, and we, as I say, we settle the matter this evening.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith, for your very cross-party approach. As you said, I assume if we do this, it would probably be 4,800 that we'd move to the Christ Pieces one, just so the money still adds up. We do have a spare £73, I believe, in the additions, but I'm happy to leave that to officers to refine. Happy with Councillor Bick, Councillor Smith. And again, as I think John and James mentioned, if the feasibility studies for any of these projects don't work, the money wouldn't be wasted, would it? It would come back. You know, so any of these, if it turns out any of them aren't feasible, then we don't spend the full amount. We're not losing that money. So, I mean, I personally, as Market Ward Council, would support the Christ Pieces one. It's definitely a desire line. People leap over the fence even if it is in place, and actually, so it's not really a choice between having beautiful green space or not. It's sort of how we manage that. And you know, for example, we put a gate on it. You don't have to take the fence away. So I would welcome a feasibility study into seeing what we could do there. I don't see anyone speaking against the proposal between Councillors Bick and Smith that we remove Windsor Road and add Christ Pieces back in to £4,800. No hands up. John and James, are you happy with that, or is there anything else we need to do? I'm getting a thumbs up from James and John. Is that okay as well?
Yes, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Claire, could you just check the Democratic Services inbox, just see if there's anything on this particular item? No, there isn't. Okay, so we have our open forum now. We haven't had any questions submitted in advance. but we have had one just submitted a few minutes ago. Claire, would you be kind enough to either read that out or just, I think Claire is about to put it on the screen for you. Bear with us a minute, we're just doing the joys of Microsoft Teams. Here we go. So this has come in from a member of the public. Could councillors discuss how the public can get updates of the various items raised between now and September 24, where the committees could return after the pause of the review? Which is a very good point, I have to say. Certainly, as chair, I'm very happy to update Democratic Services on any of the action points we've taken forward. And I suggest that we will publish those as we would normally for the action points on the relevant West Central Area Committee website. We also have Community Matters magazine and obviously the council's Twitter and Facebook feed, and obviously local councillor teams who, as county and city, I'm sure would be very happy to take forward residents' views. But I am mindful that there is a pause, so I would urge residents to raise any issues with your local councillors. But I will also undertake to make sure that any actions are updated and published up to the website as we would normally do after this committee. Does anyone have any comments or other suggestions they wish to add? I can't see any, so I think that's okay. And there's no further questions in the Democratic Services inbox. So I think it remains to me to say thank you very much for everyone who participated in West Central Area Committee this evening. As you are probably already aware, but for anyone watching, the council decided last month, October 23, that we would pause area committees for 6 months from the end of 2023. So this would be the last West Central Area Committee, so that it can be considered as to whether there may be more or different ways of engaging ways for councillors to hear community issues. A report back on emerging ideas and options is due to Civic Affairs Committee in July 2024. And as ever, I'd urge any residents, as well as obviously councillors, to put your feedback in if you have any thoughts about how we could do this better or differently, because obviously it is welcome to have an opportunity to have city and county councillors together, as well as our officers. So I would like to thank everyone very much for coming this evening. And unless there's anything else, I will ask the meeting producer, Boris, if you could just take us offline, please. And good night, everybody.
Thank you.